way does this go?
When is Stan coming back?
I don't know, actually. Sometime soon, I hope. I would assume he's going to be around for Pesach. That would be my hope. A lot of these guys come back for Pesach. So, and so forth.
Some of our Kohanim like to go to Yerushalayim.
Well, if they have a lot to do, then there's a lot of things that I've been planning that might not be appropriate anymore. The Kohanim are back in business. The world will have significantly changed. Although being in Jerusalem for Pesach is a pleasure because of the restaurants.
I was there once for Purim.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, that's with the kids.
Okay, right here.
I have a question. In reference to the death penalty we discussed this time,
Yeah.
I thought about it. I figured under the Roman Empire, or the Holy Roman Empire at that point, I didn't think that the Jews were allowed to, do that.
Correct.
I checked it up. I found that up until about 600 AD, the whole Roman Empire was in charge.
That's right.
So basically, the Bet Din gave him a thing, and they couldn't carry it out.
Correct.
And further reading, I found out that there is no circumstantial evidence included in our consideration of capital punishment. So basically, the example was if a guy saw a man running across a field, another man is chasing him with a sword, and the guy that was watching stopped to tie his shoelace, and he looked up from tying his shoelace. The other guy is laying on the ground dead. The guy with the sword is standing over the bloody sword.
Right.
However, he did not actually see him being killed, so he's not considered a witness.
Right.
And further reading,
He didn't warn him either.
that's right, it had to warn him also. So the point is, the Torah says, the punishment is death in certain things. However, they make it very difficult to prove these things. So in other words, they try to protect life as well as they could.
That's exactly true. So the question, because they're not going to hear what you asked, is about death penalty in Rabbinic Judaism. Do they really have the authority for the death penalty? And there's two things. One, they didn't have the authority. The Romans kept that authority to themselves. And in the Christian empire, the Christians kept that to themselves. And in the Muslim empires, the Muslims kept that to themselves. And nobody ever gave Jews authority to execute. And Jewish authority wouldn't have extended to non-Jewish people anyways under those governments. So even within the Jewish system of law, what are they doing? And what they're doing is they're analyzing the logic of death penalty cases based on an historic circumstance that doesn't exist anymore. And you're absolutely right. They legislate it almost entirely out of existence. You need to have two witnesses who have witnessed that the person committing the murder was warned that he's committing a death penalty offense. He needs to acknowledge the warning and go ahead and kill the person anyways in the presence of witnesses. So any piece of that's missing. So your example is a good one. He's running down the street with a sword, and you look away, and then you look over again, and now the guy's dead with the sword in his back, and the murderer is standing on top of him, going, I killed him. It's you don't have enough evidence to convict. The other thing is the rabbis said that a Beit Din that convicts somebody to death like once in decades is considered a bloody Beit Din. They knew they were making it, for all intents and purposes, a non-issue, right? But the question of who's eligible to testify in a regular court case gets affected by what we know about who's eligible to testify in a capital case. And they're drawing logic off of that actually does have a real impact. So they're going to say, well, they're not allowed to testify in a capital case. It doesn't matter there are no capital cases. The logic is still good. We're going to learn out from that they can or can't in the lesser case. And that's where we are right now. You're right, though. It's great research. Where'd you go? Did you go online?
Where else? No, I
Since there's no death penalty in Israel today anyway.
There's death penalty in Israel for genocide and terrorism.
No, they can execute terrorists.
I'm not sure if you can execute terrorists. I think it must be theoretically possible. I mean, basically, Israel engages in what we call extrajudicial, executions.
Assassinations.
Yeah, like when they kill the head of,
Yeah.
some terrorist organization anywhere in the world, then it's
But judicially, I mean,
within the court system. The only ones I'm aware of are genocide.
that's still not.
Another thing I found that was, if a man was accused of violating the Shabbos, they had a witness that said they saw him violate the
Mhm.
Shabbos. And another person said they saw him violating him praying to an idol.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not two witnesses because
Right.
they didn't see the same offense.
Right. Two witnesses seeing him do a different death penalty offense is not enough to convict him of the death penalty. That's correct.
But did they put, in practicality, did they put away people for life in prison?
There were no prisons.
So you didn't have any incarceration?
They didn't have the authority to put away.
There were no Jewish prisons. So what happened, look, over time what happened, let's take, for example, what we find in the Chuvot of the Rosh in medieval Spain. The Rosh is very clear that they would convict somebody in the Jewish court, and then they would tell the local non-Jewish authority, this person has been convicted. And the non-Jewish authority would come and take him and execute him. So it wasn't the Jewish court executing him, but the Jewish court said, this person is so-and-so, or the non-Jewish court would, whip him, or the non-Jewish court would do whatever the judgment was. And once you're in the non-Jewish court, you're in much worse shape, right? So you didn't want to get handed over to the non-Jewish authorities, right? Because they don't care what they do to you. And they're basically getting paid by the Jewish community to administer whatever those punishments are. So that would have been a more common kind of thing. You should hand him over to the Romans. That's why, the Jesus stories, they're really messed up. Historically, there's something and then there's not something. So I don't know if you've ever studied the question of the trial and execution of Jesus of Nazareth as told in the Christian stories, but they have this back and forth. He goes to Herod, he goes to the Sanhedrin, he goes to Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate sends him back to Herod. Herod sends him back to Pontius Pilate. And Pontius Pilate just says, fine, not my problem. I wash my hands of you, and he has him executed. There's enough in there that's just historically not correct that we know that that's not how justice worked at that time. But there is enough of it that's also correct, that only the Romans would have been able to execute, certainly in Jerusalem, and anybody following, wouldn't have cared. The Sanhedrin couldn't have done it. So.
Another one interesting that runs was a witness. If all of us saw somebody kill somebody looking through his window,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't say to him, you can get killed because you're killing somebody.
He didn't get a warning, so he didn't know his death penalty, so he can't be held accountable to it. So garbage over there?
Yeah, I'll pass it on. It's
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get started. What we did last time, we were on 27b, and there was a Mishnah. Okay, the Mishnah had a couple of pieces to it. We're in chapter 3 of Sanhedrin, Zeborer. Mishnah, I don't know, it's Mishnah Gimel or Dalet in the actual Mishnah. We're going to do it. 27b2 is the Mishnah.
Was a B too.
yeah, we finished being.
We're on B3.
I want to do a little Chazara. I'm just going to run through it really fast. Elohim Akrovim, these are the ones who are disqualified. These are the relatives who are disqualified from testimony or sitting on a Beit Din on a case that applies to their relative. Okay, it's not like this is a general rule, because then nobody would ever be able to be a witness. So this is people involved in the case. If you are achiv or achi achimo, you're a brother, the brother's brother, the father's brother, the mother's brother, the sister's husband, the father's sister's husband, the mother's sister's husband, the mother's husband, the father-in-law, the brother-in-law, hen v'nehem v'chatnehem, their sons and their sons-in-laws. Okay, so basically, you take every immediate relative of yours and the male in that marriage cannot be a witness or a judge. So you take all your immediate relatives and the male in their marriages. So your immediate relative might be a woman, and then it's her husband, or it might be a man, in which case it's him. And all of those male people's sons and sons-in-laws are also not kosher as witnesses. All right? And the reason is because you, your siblings, your parents, your children, and your uncles all stand to inherit from you, and their sons all stand to inherit from them. Their sons-in-law would inherit from them as well, as long as they're married to the daughter at the time of death. So if you die and your father dies and your uncle dies, your cousin is going to inherit your stuff that would have gone to your uncle because your dad's dead, right? That kind of stuff. So it's just lines of inheritance. V'chorgo levado, his stepson alone. So my stepson, my wife's son from another marriage, can inherit, from me because it's from his mother, but nobody else in his lineage can. Like his son is not my inheritor. His son-in-law is not my inheritor. So in the case of a stepson, it's just the stepson. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Zo Mishnat Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Yossi says this is how, everything we just learned is how Rabbi Akiva taught the issue. Aval Rishona Dodo Uven Dodo V'chol Rui L'Roshav. Originally the Mishnah was much simpler. It just said him, his uncle, the sons, and everybody who can inherit. It was a general rule. Basically, Rabbi Akiva came in and he spelled it all out for us. Okay, V'chia Karov Lo B'Otasha, and all who were related at the time of the event or the court case. If they were related, they're not kosher. Haya Karov V'Nitrache Kareze Kasher. But if he had at one point been related and now he's not, divorce or death. So let's say, my brother-in-law, but my sister has died. Well, my brother-in-law can't inherit from me, so now he's a kosher witness, right? Or if he divorced her, he can't inherit from me anymore. He's a kosher witness. Rabbi Yehuda says, Afilu meita bitov v'yesh lo banim mimenu hari zekarov, unless he has a son from that marriage. Because if it's my daughter and my son-in-law, and I have a grandson from them, and my daughter dies, my grandson is still in my line of lineage. So in that case, the son-in-law is still relative enough. He's not my son-in-law anymore, but he is the father to my grandson. And so he's in a line of inheritance. My grandson would inherit from me, but if my grandson dies, his father gets it. So there's a line of inheritance there.
Question.
Yeah.
You talked about women not inheriting.
Correct. Women inherit under the authority of their husbands.
I forget the exact. His 5 daughters.
The Benot Slovchad in the Torah. The Benot Slovchad in the Torah say we need to inherit because my father had sons. And then they're forced to marry in their tribe.
The thing is to keep the property within the tribe.
Right.
It's not because of the woman.
Right.
But the woman still is inheriting.
Correct. Under the authority of her husband.
She's
So
no husband.
they had to marry in the tribe.
But she inherited prior to. Didn't they prior to getting married? Or they got married.
They in the same resolution, they all get married within the tribe, and they inherit. So it's clear from the Torah that the Benot Slovchad are not inheriting because it is just and right that women be treated equally to men. That's not how they inherit.
I understand to keep the property. That I understand.
Right.
To keep the property.
There's 2 versions of the story. The first version of the story says God says they are just, they are right, they inherit. Then in another book of the Torah, it circles back and says, and by the way, they had to marry within the tribe.
I have,
Rabbinic law likes the second story more than the first.
I have an issue about someone, let's say, got divorced.
Well, let me
and
finish the Mishnah.
Okay.
Okay, just a little piece of the Mishnah I want to finish. So there's the Ohev and the Sone, right? The friend and enemy. The Ohev is Shoshvino. The Ohev is someone who is involved in his wedding. And the Sone is Kol Mi Shelo Diber Imo Shlosha Yamim Be'eva. Anybody who gave him the silent treatment in anger for 3 days. Amrulo, they said to him, Lo nech shadu Yisrael al kach. We would never ever suspect an Israelite of being that. And general interpretation isn't the silent treatment guy, but that anyone would lie out of love or hate. All right, so the general ending here is a general ending. Lo nech shadu. Nobody was ever actually suspected or accused of lying out of love or hate. Nevertheless, the line in the Mishnah is pretty clear, and the line in the Mishnah becomes the halacha. And it goes into Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah and Sefer Mitzvot Gedolot, and other places pick this up and they make that halacha. So your groomsman can not be involved in later testimony. It's interesting because your groomsman will often sign your ketubah. Yeah.
You did not speak to someone for 3 days. Is there a time frame on this?
Like how long ago was that?
I mean,
I think
you were a
that
kid, you did it, and then
I think the pshat is that at the time of the testimony, he's giving him the silent treatment, right? He's in the anger now. I don't think it means that he can't testify regarding him ever for the rest of his life. There's got to be some tikkun. There's got to be some ability to do tshuva. I mean, we had people eating treif in public to tick people off and offend God, and they have a way to get back in. So I think this guy would have to have a way to get back in. I think it's during the anger. But the Ohev, the Shoshvin, that's like the rest of his life, so who knows? Yeah.
The point I was wanting to make was that if someone gets divorced that would have, let's say, inherited, but now they won't, they may be very angry
They might
that they
be.
don't. And if that's the case, even though they could testify, there could be this, that people don't know that there is this underlying, hatred there, you feel,
Yeah, but
it gets a little-
you can't
You
go
think
so
alone 3
far.
days, right?
I mean, the bitter ex-husband, coming and holding a grudge for the rest of his life. And,
it's not about the money.
right.
He was married to this wonderful woman who was so affluent, and then she died, and
Well, she died, he
I can't
inherits.
get the money.
No, but when she dies, he inherits from her. If
No,
she's
but
wealthy,
but
he's
if
got
she-
it.
If
She's-
she hasn't received,
She's the daughter of a wealthy man, and she doesn't outlive her parents, and she dies, and
Yeah, that's what
that's a horrible story.
I'm let's go to one.
Okay, the Gemara cites scripture source. Okay, so now we're going to have a question we've seen before. Minahane Mile. The rabbis just came up with a whole bunch of rules that really aren't in the Torah. And they're not supposed to have the authority to make things up. They have the authority to tell you what the Torah means in all kinds of expansive ways, but they have to hang it on the Torah. They have no authority on their own. Their authority derives from Torah. So the question of the Gemara is asking the Tanaim, right? So the Amoraim of the Gemara are asking the Tanaim, Minahane Mile, where do these teachings come from? And the only acceptable answer is a Torah verse. So we're going to argue over several different Torah verses and what they mean. Okay? So we did Detana Rabbanan. So a Baraita from a Tanaitic teaching, an older teaching, comes in and says, Lo yum tu avot abanim ma Talmud. The verse is from Deuteronomy that fathers do not die for their sons. And the end of the verse is, and sons do not die for their fathers. Or actually, mutu, they should not be killed. So fathers shall not be executed or killed for their sons, and sons will not be killed for their fathers. The simple meaning of that is what?
If
son commits the crime, he shouldn't kill the father.
Right. You would think that a father's crime does not execute a son, and a son's crime does not execute a father. That seems to be the simple meaning of it. So Mal Talmud Lamar, what does it come to teach? And it teaches exactly what we just said. But it assumes that. But then it comes to say that that can't be what it means. If it comes to teach actually that fathers should not be executed for the sins of their sons, or sons for the sins of the fathers, we already have a different verse in the Torah from Leviticus that says each man according to his own sin shall be executed. Okay, so I have a verse that tells you everyone gets executed for their own sin. So this verse can't be teaching me that principle because God doesn't stutter and he doesn't use two verses to teach the same thing. Ever, 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 ever. That would mean God is repeating himself. God is wasting his time. God is spilling ink. That's not what God does in the Torah. So the verse, which is Lo yumatu avod abanim, fathers shall not be killed regarding their sons, or sons regarding their fathers, cannot mean each person is killed for his own sin, because I have a verse that says that. It must mean something else. Okay? So that's a problem. So we've got the Hanimile. Where does this come from? You think it's from this verse about fathers and sons, but it can't be because I have this other verse that already teaches me that principle. So what are we going to do? Ella, rather, what is the verse supposed to say? Lo yumtu avot abanim. That verse means be'edut banim, right? Uvanim lo yumtu al avot be'edut avot. So because the verse can't mean that they don't die for each other's sins, it must mean something. And what it means is they can't die based on the testimony of each other. Is that what the verse says? No. Is that not what the verse means?
Yes.
Yes. Okay? So you have two verses from which you could derive the principle that a father and a son don't die for each other's sins. That's intolerable. One of them must mean something else. So one of them is being used here to mean it's about testimony. They can't testify on each other to kill each other. Okay. Uvanim ba'avon avot. Law? And you telling me that sons don't die for their father's sins? The Gemara objects. But hakativ, poked avon avod al banim. God requites the iniquity of the son of the father on the sons. It says it in the Torah. Poked avon avod al banim. God requits or puts the punishments of the fathers on the sons. To the third generation is the end of the verse. So we have to deal with that now. Okay? Hatam kisha ochazin ma'aseh avotem b'dehem. And the principle that's going to get us out of that is that God revisits the sins of the father and punishment on the sons and the sons' sons and the sons' sons to the third generation is when those sons are repeating the sins of the father. That's the interpretation. So it's not all sons of sinful fathers will get punished, but the sons who repeat their father's ways, they get punished. And that's what God's talking about when he says, Poked avon avod al banim.
What kind of sins are we talking about?
Anything.
Anything?
Death penalty.
Generations.
The classic in the Torah would be idolatry. Right? So the father who's an idolater, should the son be killed? If the son is an idolater, yes, is the answer. Okay? All right, now, Kita Tanya, we're going to get another Baraita. So we had a Baraita that established that Lo Yimatu Avot Al Banim means edut, testimony. That Baraita also, as we say, B'derech Agav, by way of the back, kind of sideways, also taught us that Ish Kechet O Yumat, each man shall die according to his own sin, individual responsibility. Okay, so we had the Baraita that used those two verses. It didn't really focus on the Leviticus one. This Baraita is going to be where we learn that that's what the Leviticus one means.
Question.
Yeah.
If his son is growing up under his father's influence, and his father's an idolater,
Yes.
the son knows nothing else.
The son only knows idolatry. Does he get punished? Yes. If you're the son of a murderer and you commit murder, you're a murderer.
No, I'm
I mean-
saying that
I'm sorry, I grew up in a bad neighborhood. I was a broken
I know, it's the
family.
only
I
thing
didn't.
that you go in that society,
That's
and
what
that's
they
the
call
only thing you
extenuating
can do.
circumstances in court.
The Torah is willing to prescribe an entire city of idolaters and wipe them all out.
Yes.
Right? The Torah has no tolerance for this.
No, but we understand what you're saying, but if the person doesn't know anything else,
They get executed. Right? It's a very clear system. The Torah really, it's interesting because you have verses like tzedek tzedek tirdof, you shall pursue justice, and it seems to presume a system of justice and a system of some level of jurisprudence, and that you need to have a punishment to have justice in the society. Like a price has to be paid for that before the society can move on. On the other hand, when it comes to things like idolatry and things, the Torah is not looking for justice. The Torah wants those people dead and gone, removed. Uviarta aram kibecha, and you shall destroy the evil in your midst. They want those people just removed and gone. It's not about, oh, you did something really bad. You're going to have to do something serious to make that up. Say no. Intolerable, unacceptable. Execute them. Clean up the list of membership and move forward.
We usually say a bar mitzvah is when you take on your own mitzvot.
Yes.
Would this also apply here? In other words, that before bar mitzvah, you really
Yes.
can't.
Correct. The 12-year-old is not punished for his father's idolatry, but a 13-year-old who engages in it is responsible.
where did that age come from?
That comes from the
growing
Mishnah.
your hair.
It's from a Mishnah.
Yeah, there's a Mishnah that talks about shtei se'arot, that he's grown 2 pubic hairs, or reached the age of 13. And there's some discussion about, is it the first of those 2, or do you need both of those 2? And then they finally decide we're really not checking. We're just going to go by the age. That was a smart development. Avoids many problems in the modern age. Right? Can you imagine rabbis have to check this? What the lawsuits would be?
Yeah. Just seems like, yeah. In the Torah, you don't see anything about it, so they had to come like.
Yeah, it's in the
Can't
Mishnah.
remember anywhere.
It's in the Mishnah. It's in the Mishnah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this baraita. So the second baraita, which we did do, but I'm putting it in context for us to understand it, is Kitatanya, as it is said. Okay? Va'af ba'avonot avotam itam yimaku. So it brings another verse from Leviticus that says, but even the sins of their fathers with them they will wither. Okay? In other words, the sons will wither according to the sins of the fathers, which means the sons are suffering divine punishment for the sins of the fathers. That's what that verse seems to mean, but it has the word not because of, but with, itam, with them. So this baraita is going to come and say, the sons wither away with the sins of the fathers, kisha ochazim maseh avotehem b'dehem, when they continue the deeds of their fathers. Literally, when they hold onto their father's deeds in their own hands. Right? So in idolatry, that's literally ochez be'avodah zarah. They're actually engaging, touching, handling the idolatry. Okay? So if your father's doing it and you're doing it, you will wither away. Now, you know you're going to have a problem, right? Because we don't like to use 2 verses for one thing, and we had the verse already about each person having their own problem. All right, so what are they going to do? They're going to say, Ata omer kisha ochazim. You say that the verse says they will wither when they continue their father's practices. O eno ella kisha eno ochazim. Or perhaps rather, it's even where they do not retain their father's practices. So they're going to try and push this logic. So we're going to say this verse, Af ba'avonot avotam itam yimaku, they wither with their father's sins. They're not doing their father's sins. Because it says, Ish kachet o yumatu. Because it says elsewhere in the Torah, each person dies according to their own sin, which is the same verse we saw in the first baraita. Personal responsibility. So this verse seems to be contradicting the interpretation of the first verse in this baraita. Okay? Hare kisha ochazim ma'aseh avotim b'dehem, and so that means only when they continue their father's deeds. So this baraita is a little weird. It's a little tricky. It says, it teaches in a Baraita that the sons will wither with their fathers. And that's when they do their deeds. And if you were to say, you might say it also means when they don't do their deeds, because we have a sin that says each person dies according to his own sin, right? So in other words, it's not only when they father their father's sins that they wither away, but also when they commit their own sin, they'll wither away. So that's what that Baraita is doing. So we've got 2 verses about sons dying with or because of fathers, but one is in fact on his own sin and one is following the father's sin. That's all. It's another Baraita that separates off the idea of individual responsibility in that Leviticus verse. That's why it's brought here. It's not going to be brought up again. Ready? Okay, velo. But is it not so? Hakativ uchashlu ish be'achiv, ish ba'avon achiv. Why is it written in another verse, and even another verse, man will stumble over his brother, milamed shekulan arivim zebazeh. All right, so you're going to say, in these Baraitas, you just proved to me that a son does not testify to have his father killed. It's unacceptable. And we also know in the Mishnah that it was all the brothers. It's not just son and fathers, but all the brothers. So this little objection is coming in and saying, well, you can't say people don't testify or cause each other to die or cause each other to be punished in a court, because we've got a case where it says very clearly in the Torah, man will stumble because of his brother. Right? So a man can cause his brother to be punished. My brother is a sinner, and I'm going to stumble because of my brother. I'm going to get taken down with him. And we are taught, Milamed shekulan arivim bazeh. Everybody is mixed zebazeh. Everybody. Now, this is a phrase that gets used in really like happy, progressive, liberal Judaism. Kol Yisrael arivim zelazeh. Everybody is mutually responsible for each other. In the Talmud here, it's being used in a darker, more foreboding way, in that everybody suffers from each other. Right? All ships sink in a lowering tide. Right?
This is like guilt by association.
Exactly. Your brother goes down, you're going down with him. Right? So we're all, kind of mixed up with each other. And now the answer to that is hatam shahaya bi'adam limchot velo micho. The case where your brother takes you down is where you had the chance to rebuke him and stop him, and you remained silent. You did not. Okay? So the brother, it's not that the brother testified against you or that you're being punished because of him. It's because you were supposed to stop him, and you did not.
That's like if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
No innocent bystanders.
Well, you are your brother's keeper.
You are absolutely your brother's keeper. You're commanded in the Torah to rebuke someone who is committing a sin.
You might have to knock them out and bind them.
You have to rebuke them. Do you have to physically strike them? I'm not sure, but you need to verbally rebuke them. If you see, my favorite example is in Israel, sometimes I mistakenly presume the kashrut of someplace, right? Because I'm in an area where everything's kosher, and I think I go from this store to this store, and maybe somebody comes up to me and they say, that's not kosher, right? They're not doing it to embarrass me or judge me, but they're doing that to stop me from committing a sin. And I look up, and sure enough, it's a hamburger stand without a kashrut certificate. And in Israel, if you're a hamburger stand, you can get a kashrut certificate, right? It's not that hard. Yeah.
When they say brother here, do they mean just another member?
They
of
mean
your tribe,
brother.
Or they mean your real,
Yeah, 'cause
your
we're talking about
biological
The original
brother.
source of it does not mean your biological brother, but the rabbis are using it here for biological brother because of the Mishnah, which is talking about brothers.
That's like Father Flanagan. He ain't heavy, he's my
Brother. All right. 28a, Ashkechan. All right, so the phrase Ashkechan is, it means we find it. We have found it. And what it really means is you have proven to our satisfaction that, and it will tell you whatever is Ashkechan, what has been proven. Don't feel that your own requirements for logical argumentation need to have been met for them to be happy. You might not yet be happy that this has been proven, but once they say Ashkechan, it means they've accepted it, it's done, it's proven, they're moving on to another piece of the topic, okay? So what they're going to do is they're going to go through each of the relatives, and they're going to say the Minahan Imile, where do these words come from, isn't just in general, but it's going to be about each different relation that's forbidden in the Rabbi Akiva rewriting of the Mishnah. So you can see why this tradition that Rabbi Akiva went through all the details, and somebody else went through all the proofs. And in the Gemara, we've got the lists of proof and objection, which really makes you need Rabbi Akiva going through the list. Otherwise, someone would say, oh, you proved it regarding this, but you didn't prove it regarding that. All right, so Ashkechan. Ashkechan avot levanim, uvanim lavot. Okay, fine, you proved it. You've got fathers and sons can't testify regarding each other. So how much the more so that fathers cannot testify concerning one another. In other words, who are the avot of my generation? That would be my father is a father, my uncle is a father, right? Because remember, the Mishnah was like the father, the father's brother-in-law, and all their sons, right? So anybody who is named is now an av, is a father, because they all have sons that are forbidden to you. So when we talk about banim, it's going to be the generation below the people who are named. And when we talk about avot, it's the generation of the people who are named. Not necessarily my father, but the people who are named. And the banim are their children who are also disqualified from testimony. Got that? That's a strange move that we don't see in the word avot, but that's what they mean. And I know that because I studied the rest of the page. Okay, it's the only thing it could possibly mean. Okay, so ready? We have proven that the fathers and sons were proven, but what about the fathers themselves? How do we know that? Banim levanim min nalan, and the sons by themselves, how do we know? So how do we know that the brothers can't testify regarding us, or that the first cousins, their sons, can't testify regarding each other? Im kain lichtov kra lo yumetu avot albein. So if you wanted to disqualify only the uncle, but not the cousin, or just one cousin and not the two, the Torah would have said, Lo yumetu avot al bain. What does the Torah say? Lo yumetu avot al banim. The Torah says the person shall not be put to death on sons, plural. And if you're going to say it's just, the one or the other, it should have said ben, but it didn't say ben, it said sons, therefore it has to be plural. My banim. So what is being taught by? The plural, sons. De afilu banim lahadade. Even sons testifying regarding each other. Right? So you could have testified, you could have said that, well, the son of my uncle is not permitted to me. Right? But what about the son of my uncle and my brother both testifying together? Right? Are they allowed to testify together? Well, the reason that it says banim is to say any group of sons from these guys are not allowed. All their sons are not allowed together, because it says banim. If it only wanted to rule out one of them and not both of them together, it would have only said ben. Is that a convincing, necessary, logical proof? No. It is not a logical proof. Because you could have drawn the same conclusion from the word banim if you wanted to. So but for them, ashkechan. All right, so okay, ashkechan is the next word. Fine, ashkechan lebanim ledadade. So these cousins, sons on their own, each of them getting together, sons of different fathers, fine, you've proven that. Banim la'alma minalan. But what about sons of any other relatives? Just stam, regular old random sons getting together. So Rami Bar Chama says Svarahu, which doesn't make me happy. He says the reason that we ruled out other relatives testifying each other with each other is just on the force of logic. It's just a savara. It's reasoning. Okay, why? Because I've got a baraita that says Kidatanya, as it writes in a baraita, Ein ha'edim na'asim zomamin ad sheyizomu shnehem. You can't declare witnesses to be Zomamim. You remember Zomamim? Two witnesses who was proven they couldn't possibly give the testimony because they weren't there at that time and place. So how do you prove two witnesses to be Zomamim? You need two other witnesses who prove that they are Zomamim. So you can't, they're not Zomamim until both are shown to be Zomamim. So if I come and I testify, let's say that Ron and Bonnie are testifying against Stewart in a court case. And so Harold and I have seen that Ron was in Atlantic City gambling that day. We know he wasn't there. How do we know? Because you and I went gambling together. And we saw him there. Okay? So probably a bad example, given the gamblers are not supposed to testify, but okay. So in any event, we saw him. He wasn't there. He's a liar. He's an Eid Zomem. The two of them do not get declared Eidim Zomamim unless we can prove that both of them are, in fact, Eidim Zomamim. Right? That's what this Baraita says. I'm not saying that that's the halacha. I'm just saying that's what this Baraita says. Okay, so this Baraita says that, and it wants to learn something from that. The Isal Kadatach Banim La'alma Ksherim, and if you wanted to draw the conclusion that sons in general are kosher, then Nimtza Eid Zomem Neherag Be'edut Achiv. You could find in that case that an Eid Zomem, an individual Eid Zomem, is killed because of the testimony of his brother. So, all right. So what's the logic? The logic is this. Let's say, I don't know, Ron, do you have a brother? What's your brother's name? Rick. Ron and Rick are the witnesses because you think that brothers can testify. Or let's make him a second cousin, right? Whatever. You think that these people can testify. And Ron's an Eid Zomem. And it's a capital case. What do you do to an Eid Zomem in a capital case? You execute him. He only becomes an Eid Zomem if he is participating in a testimony of two witnesses. Him by himself it doesn't matter. He could be a single Eid Zomem. You need two people to execute somebody. So you need two witnesses to make somebody executable, and you can only punish somebody for lying based on what they would have made the other person do if there were in fact two witnesses, so there was a real risk that that person was going to get that punishment. The only reason he has a risk that he could get the punishment for lying in court is because he's testifying with his brother. Therefore, on the basis of his brother's testimony, he is being subjected to death penalty.
And you need two Eid Zomim two people to say I'm an Eid Zomem.
Correct.
Just one.
So we have two other witnesses who have come in and testified that you're an Eid Zomem, but you're testifying with your brother, who's not an Eid Zomem, and because he was there, because of his testimony, making you a vulnerable witness to this charge, because of that, you're going to get executed. So how can that be? That's the logic. So let's see it again in the language. Kidatanya is taught in the Baraita. This is Rami Bar Chama. Ein ha'edim na'asim zomemim ad sheyizomu shnehem. An Eid Zomen is not an Eid Zomen until they are both shown to be Zomim. V'isal kadatach banim la'alma ksherim. And if you think that these witnesses can generally be done together, then you could find that the sons are eligible. All right? If they're eligible, then nimsa Eid Zomem neharag be'edut achiv. We find a Zomem witness killed as a result of the testimony of his brother. Each brother is being killed because of his brother.
Imagine about those two brothers now who said they saw somebody beat up this actor.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The
They were
two,
brothers.
sure. The Jesse Smollin case, or whatever,
Yeah, they're brothers.
Smollett case in Chicago.
Yeah.
The people he hired to beat him up were, if he hired them allegedly, were brothers, and it's on their testimony that the law wanted to prosecute him for false. But in the Jewish jurisprudence, they would not be able to testify together because they were brothers. So there'd be no case, and the case would get thrown out, which is what happened anyways.
And the Orthodox mayor wasn't happy.
He's conservative. Rahm Emanuel is conservative.
Was he conservative?
And his daughters were bat mitzvahed in a Masorti ceremony in Israel while he was working as the chief of staff for Obama. He's Masorti. He's conservative.
Until tomorrow.
Okay, so let's do it again. So let's say the easiest case. Ron and Rick are both Zamamim. They're in this plot in cahoots to get somebody executed. And you're going to say that they can, because we know that Zamamim can be executed together, you're going to say that on the basis of a brotherly testimony, these guys can, in fact, their testimony works and they can be Zamamim, they can be executed. And in that case, he's killed on the basis of his brother. So, that's Rami Bar Chama's point of view, right? So he says brothers can testify. So Rami Bar Chama is not happy with the general understanding that these brother cousins or whoever cannot testify together because the Ein Zomem thing to him proves they can. That's Rami Bar Chama. Rava is going to come and he's going to reject that. Amar le Rava, ulitamich haditnan, but according to your reasoning, we have a problem with a Mishnah. Big problem. Okay? Shlosha achiv ve'echad mitzaref imahem. We have a Mishnah where you have three witnesses. They're all brothers. Brother, brother, brother. Brother 1, brother 2, brother 3. And one person mitzaref imahem. And another witness, A, joins in them in their testimony. And we understand this is going to be a capital case. Okay? Now, what happens? This, in fact, you don't need 4 people for testimony, right? But you can't have the brothers testifying together. But you have A testifying as well. But all 3 of these guys are there. So, you wind up with 3 different pairs of witnesses. AB1, AB2, AB3. Okay? And this is totally normal, which in Young Frankenstein would make this AB normal. Sorry. Been waiting to use that for years. Thank you. Okay, ready. So, Amar le Rava. Rava says, Ditnan, we learned in a Mishnah that 3 brothers who mix together with another, this is 3 groups of witnesses, and 1 group for Hazamah. Okay, so if you testify that they're Zomamim, they're all Zomamim. Right? 3 brothers all say they saw the thing, and those 3 brothers were not there. And A was not there. So so the Zomamim is only happening because it's brothers' testimony making each other Zomamim. Right? So the brothers' testimony is again making them Zomem, making them subject to death penalty. So this is Rava saying to Rami Bar Chama, according to your logic, that would not be acceptable. Hari elo edut, shlosha edut echat lahazama. They are considered one testimony regarding the laws of hazama. Nimsa ed zomen mishalem mamon be'ed. I'm sorry. So let's make sure we get the logic. Each to a different year's use, and one unrelated witness who observed the entire 3 years' use. They joined with each of them. And these are considered 3 separate testimonies, and they can establish a chazakah. Nevertheless, they are considered one testimony with regard to the law of hazamah. According to your reasoning, we should say here as well, Nimsa ed zomem mishalem mamon be'edut achiv. We find a zomem witness paying money as a result of his brother's testimony, which is impossible. Okay? Ella hazamah me'alma ka'ate. Rather, hazamah comes from an external source, not from the fellow witnesses. Hachanami hazamah me'alma ka'ate. So, Rava comes and he says, I have a Mishnah that tells me that in this case, they're all subject to hazamah together. And according to your logic, Rami Bar Chama, it's only because they exist together that they become subject to hazamah, so the punishment is on the basis of each other's testimony. That's not correct. He says the hazamah comes from C and D, who testify. That's the strength of the hazamah. That's the testimony that forces them to pay whatever it is they have to pay. So it's not that you learn that they can testify together. What you learn is that hazamah testimony is not about their testimony. It's somebody else. So in Ravi Bar Chama's case, where you had B1 and B2 sitting lying as the two witnesses, and the hazama against them comes from outside. They're not being executed on the basis of each other's testimony. They're being executed on the basis of C and D's testimony, who is not related to either of them. That's kosher testimony. This is Rava's refutation of Rabbi Bar Chama. Okay? So Rava is saying, no, Rabbi Bar Chama, this case does not prove that brothers can testify together. I have a Mishnah that shows brothers involved in a case, but the hazama comes from outside. So it's not that they're testifying together, it's that they're each testifying with A.
What's the origin of the word hazama? I'm not familiar.
To contradict.
Okay, so in other words, this is a person who contradicts, and that's
Zomem, yeah, lizamem.
So,
Okay, so here too, with regard to the two relatives, in a pair of capital case, we would say they become zomamim, the hazama comes from outside. So Rami Bar Chama fails to show that two relatives may not testify as a pair. 28a, 2. 28a, 2. Okay? The Gemara instead finds a source to disqualify two relatives from testifying each other in the very same verse cited above. Ela, im kain lichtov kra uvein al avot. Rather, if it is so, let the scripture say, and because of a father's son. So instead of avot al banim, banim al banot, let it say bain al avot. Let a singular son not be put to death because of the fathers. Inami hem al avot, or and they shall not be put to death because of the fathers, substituting the pronoun they for the antecedent sons instead of just being sons. So you have this external group which is they instead of banim, just mentioned in the first part of the verse. So my banim, what does banim mean? And sons, afilu banim la alma, and they draw the conclusion that sons means all relatives. Is that tight logic? No. Do you have in your head right now how that logic works? No. Right? Because the logic doesn't work. The logic doesn't work. That's why you're confused. You're looking for a straight line of logic. And it's basically saying, is this one son or two sons? Is it the one who's an Eid Zomem or not? Are they acting together or not? If they can't act together, then the Torah should have said ben individually, but it didn't. It said banim. If they can act together, then it's banim, and they can't have the death penalty on them because we have not anavot and banim together. So whether you want to make them individual, you'd have to rewrite the Torah. If you make them together, then the verse says you can't have them. That's roughly the logic playing in each of these cases. Okay? It doesn't matter what we think about the logic because the next word is ashkachan. They are satisfied with the force of logic. Okay? So, ashkachan krove ha'av. So, okay, fair enough. You've proven regarding the father's relatives, krove ha'em minalan. Where do you get off adding the brother-in-laws? Because after all, the Torah verse said fathers and sons, right? So that's the father's relatives. Doesn't say anything about in-laws. Your mother's relatives, your sister's relatives, your daughter's relatives. Amar kra avot, avot tre zimne. So here's what's going to happen. It said avot abanim o banim al avot. So it says the word avot twice, right? Amar kra avot, avot tre zimne. It said avot twice. Im eno inyan lekrove ha'av. So if it's not needed to teach the father's relatives, the tenehu inyan lekrove ha'em. Let the second avot be teaching regarding the mother's relatives. You have two avot. One means the father's relatives. The other must mean the mother's relatives. Now we know that in biblical literature, saying avotu vanim, vanimu avot is just poetic. Read it all the time. It's just the tone of Torah. It's part of the beauty in the literature of Torah. That things go A, B, B, A, surely you shall, and then indeed. Right? Surely you shall, and then indeed. Doesn't mean I'm saying two different things. It means I'm emphasizing and developing and dwelling and on the force of that idea. That's biblical parallelism. Not for the rabbis. There's no biblical parallelism in the rabbis. It said avot here, it means fathers. It says avot there, it means something else. So here's going to mean mothers. Gemara continues. Ashkechan. We are totally convinced of that proof. All right? Now, lechova. Oh, ashkechan lechova. Lezachut minalan. Great question. So, fine, you've convinced me regarding obligations, but what about merits or benefits? What does that mean? I have proven to you from all these Torah verses and Baraitot that relatives cannot testify with each other in capital cases, or even by extension in monetary cases where you are going to have to pay a fine. A son, a father, a cousin, these people cannot testify to harm each other. But how do I know they can't testify to benefit each other? After all, the verse was very negative. Sons will not be put to death on the sins of the fathers. The fathers shall not be put to death on the sons. Each person shall be put to death on his own merits, and et cetera, et cetera. They're all negative. So how do I know testimony can't be for good things? You haven't shown me a single Torah verse that would prohibit that. It's a great argument. All right. However, they're not going to accept it. Amar Kra, Yumtu, Tre Zimne. It said he shall be killed twice. So it can't mean he shall be killed both times. So im in eno inyan lechova. So if the second one can't mean chova because the first one did, then tenehu inyan lezachut. So the second he shall be killed must be for something good. So what benefit do you get if somebody is killed? Go on.
You get their share of whatever it is.
You inherit from them. So you shall not be punished for the sins of your father. And so, okay, you can't, on relatives' testimony, you can't be killed. But if somebody is killed, you might also benefit. So you can't lie for a benefit either. Right? So it is possible in capital cases that you could be lying and somebody gets killed and it's to someone's benefit. So that's not allowed either. So Yuma 2, he shall be killed, actually could mean for benefit as well as for negative. So that's, they say Yuma 2 gets used twice, and that's what it's regarding, positives and negatives. Ashkechan, we are completely convinced of that logic. Good? Next topic. Ashkechan. B'dinei nafashot. Okay, so for capital cases, I'm completely convinced of everything you've been saying. B'dinei mamonot minalan. But how do I know it applies to money? Amar Kra, Mishpat echad yeh lachem. The Torah says there shall be one law for you. Mishpat hashaveh lachem. All laws are equal. And from that we learn that all laws are equal. Laws of capital cases and laws of monetary cases. What's the problem with that conclusion? We know that's not true. Because we have different laws of testimony for capital cases and we have monetary cases. But at this point in the Gemara, we've stopped all our eshkechans, convinced of this, convinced of that, convinced of this, and we come to the conclusion that the Mishnah is firmly grounded in Torah verses that say no relatives can testify each other regarding anybody, fathers or sons. Everyone is convicted of their own sins. And that it doesn't matter if they're testifying for someone's benefit or somebody's harm, whether it's money or whether it's capital cases, they're not allowed to testify, period, across the board. And that's where the Gemara gets us to at this point, which is a great point to stop. 1 o'clock.
Ashkelon is like a little punctuation.
Ashkechan.
It's a punctuation type of thing.
Ashkechan. Ashkechan she. Aval mina is the structure. So we are convinced that this, however, what about that? And if you don't have an however, it's then the end of the series. Ashkechan usually runs in a row. There's a bunch of them. Ashkechan, Ashkechan, Ashkechan.
This is serious. Back to the concept of redundancy in Torah.
Yeah.